And welcome to the mix. Yeah, Chris, we're excited.
We are. We're excited.
Why are we excited, Chris? What's big going on this week?
I don't know. Is this a big week?
I think there's some big football action taking place.
Okay.
So
Football.
I know we're really excited. Chris, talked about this a little bit last week. You're kind of anybody but New England.
Right.
You've had a week to kind of get settled in and figure out. So are you staying loyal to that pick?
Well, I'm. To be honest, I don't care one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I am willing to offer a couple of predictions.
Okay, Chris is coming with some bold predictions. You hear it first. Now, just as a disclaimer, we're not providing these predictions for any betting purposes. So if you lose, it's not on us.
Right.
We're not condoning betting or any of that stuff.
Okay, my first prediction.
Yes.
No wardrobe malfunctions during halftime.
That's good. Justin Timberlake's back.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
My second prediction, I'll be asleep before the game's over.
Wow. So, Chris, you're not watching with anybody? You're just...
Yeah.
I'm feeling your wife will be asleep way before the game's over.
I could be.
All right.
So,
any other bold predictions?
no.
Chris, I got a bold prediction to throw in the
Mine
mix.
weren't really bold.
I got one more. At some point during the game, people are going to argue over a bad call.
Yeah.
For one side or the other, there's going to be arguments about bad calls, and they're going to think that's why the game was lost.
Right. And it'll be on Facebook.
Yeah, they're going to need a tendency to do that. So, Chris, I said I was going to hold off until today to give kind of here's where I'm at, because I've wrestled with this.
Right.
I'm about to do that, but before, I want to know about Over Easy back there. Because Over Easy, man, he said I'm coming
had a
with
bold prediction.
very, very bold and specific prediction. So, Josh, what do you think back there? What's going to happen in this game?
So if you guys remember a couple years ago, I think it was the second Super Bowl the Patriots had won their original kind of dynasty setup. And they went against the Panthers. There was a lot of like, oh, the Patriots have this. And it came out that the first half of that game, it was like there's no game happening right now. The Patriots all the way won the world. Well, then the second half, we realized the Panthers were there, and it wound up being a field goal game. And so I think the same is going to happen. I think the Patriots are going to come out. They're gonna run it up on the Eagles, and then the Eagles are going to remember who they are, and they're going to come back, and it's going to be a 34-31 game. Eagles kick a game-winning field goal with their kicker.
Wow. So he's predicting the Eagles winning. See, that kind of goes against standard thought this year, because so far this playoff season, the Patriots have been the come-from-behind team. They've been winning a lot of them coming out of the second half, as much as I despised that happening. My son, who's a Patriots fan for some reason, kept saying, New England's a second-half team, and each time I'm like, nope, it's not happening this time, and every time I had to go eat my words. And so I've struggled with it. I've gone back and forth. I have family that are Eagle fans, and I have some good friends that are Patriot fans, and I went back and forth. I said I can't really cheer for either team boldly, so it's more I'm going to cheer more against the other team more than in that team. And so today I'm here to say publicly for the first time that I think, not only do I think they're going to win, but I'm going to cheer for them to win. Go Patriots. I'm telling you, it was hard for me to say that. Like, those words will never come out of my mouth again. I did see someone put a meme up that there's some church somewhere that mentioned how many times each of these.
Yeah, that the Eagles were mentioned so many times.
Like 30 times,
and
Patriots were never
nothing.
mentioned.
Yeah,
so therefore, anyway, so for those who are watching that are Patriot fans, I'm on your side for one game. There's the only possible scenario that could ever happen. And the sad thing is, I actually like some of the Eagle players. There's some solid believers in there, but I just couldn't do it. Eagle fans throw batteries at Santa Claus, so I couldn't get behind that. So anyway, moving on to more pressing things, Chris.
But before we move on,
yeah,
because there is a bigger Super Bowl.
There is. Way more important than the football game.
That will actually help people.
Right. all that's going to happen with this one is people are going to fight. And this past week in church, we actually had the Patriot fans on one side of the aisle and the Eagle fans on the same row on opposite sides. I said, y'all cannot do that next week. But along with that, Super Bowl coming up this coming Sunday. Chris, talk about what people are going to experience when they walk into the foyer. What's that going to look like?
Right. So when they walk in the foyer, one side of the foyer is going to be representing the Eagles. And that's where if you are going to go for the Eagles, then you can place your canned food item that you're bringing in whatever container that we have designated there. And then on the other side, same deal with the Patriots. And all decorated, looking great. And if you're going for the Patriots, put your canned food items there, whether it's soup or some kind of canned vegetable or whatever that looks like. And then during the service, we're going to weigh those some way, unless it's really obvious. We're going to weigh them in some way and determine, in each service which team is going to be the winner for our Super Bowl.
That's right. And all the food is going to go directly towards the mission. Yes, sir, back there.
Based off what you said with the Eagles fans throwing batteries at Santa, do we need to specify that Eagle fans really need to put their cans in the bucket and not at Patriot fans?
Right, that's right.
Okay,
because that's for sure. I'd clarify that. That's good. Although I think a lot of our Eagle fans this weekend are not going to be Eagle fans as much as they're going to be anti-Patriot fans, so I'm not sure they're going to be quite as bold.
Right.
And then if you want to come out, like we mentioned last week, we're going to be playing football at Simmons Young Park Sunday afternoon prior to the big game. So if you want to meet us 3 o'clock this coming Sunday, it's going to be a fun time, hang out. People are asking, are we playing tackle? I'm not playing tackle.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be 2-hand touch, maybe get some flag football out there. We're not sure about that, but probably 2-hand touch. So all that. Chris, last night, man, talk about exciting stuff.
Right. Last night's status, just a great night. We appreciate everybody that came out for that. We had a really good turnout and, just able to share some really exciting things that are coming up in 2018 and some things that people already knew a little bit about, but then some things that we hadn't talked about at all. And so we kind of want to talk a little bit about some of those things. Not everything, but yeah.
A few things, just because next couple weeks we're going to get a chance to talk about these a lot during the service, but just to share, we mentioned last night we were thankful for Julie Ferris from the East Polk County Habitat coming out and sharing with us about what our partnership with Habitat is going to look like. This is one of those things where we really got to have an idea of who's kind of behind this, because we're trying to formulate what our partnership looks like. We're looking to help them with a build in Auburndale this year. Habitat for Humanity, incredible organization, faith-based organization that helps out people who don't have homes be able to have homes. And one of their core values is not to give a handout, but to give a hand up. These families are donating time. They're paying a 0% interest mortgage. They're helping out in just a monumental way.
Right.
And so this year, in place of us doing Day of Service projects, we're partnering with Habitat. And I'm really excited about that. So if you want to partner with us in Habitat, if you would shoot me an email real quick. Ron Hartman from our church is kind of heading that up. I'll put you in contact with Ron and get you on the list of people signing up for a Habitat build. So that was number one. The second thing, Chris, was Honduras. Now I know you've not had a chance to go to Honduras a little bit, but tell us a little bit about what Honduras looks like.
So this year, November 14th through the 21st. We're gonna have a mission trip down to Honduras, and what we do down there is basically build homes. The goal this year, excuse me, I don't have the flu, I promise.
Everybody else is sick, but.
Right? Yeah, So anyway, basically the goal this year is to build 2 homes while we're down there. And basically what happens is we partner with an organization down there called AFE, and basically they kind of tell us about a family that has been living in the trashed up community down there, that they're trying to help get out of that community, and so we provide a home for them. And so we're basically going to be raising money to build the homes, but then also the people who are going on the trip are going to be raising money themselves to pay for their trip as well. So just going to be a great opportunity. If you've never been involved in one of these things, it's a big next step, but from what everybody said, it's just tremendous, the opportunity that you have. So obviously you've been a couple times. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'm really excited. First of all, the groups we partner with are incredible organizations. We're working with Trash Mount Project, we're with AFE. It's just the best people. And then just to be there when you actually do the house reveal is a lot of times families are able to partner in helping build the home. Not always, but for the most part they help out. But still, when they see the finished product, the emotion of that moment is really, really powerful.
Right.
So without doubt, if you want to sign up November 14th to 21st, cost is just shy of $1,500 depending on how many people go. And
again, they can shoot you an email.
Shoot me an email. I'll get them in
Alan
contact
Tackett's
with.
actually going to be heading up the trip.
Right.
So now we talked about raising money for the trip. Tell us a little bit about one of the opportunities.
Yeah, we kind of
people have.
This was actually first broadcast in
Right.
the next couple weeks ago. We had to kind of get ahead of it, but we're having a fishing tournament April 7th. We're really excited. First ever Ridge Point Bass Tournament. Right here on the South Chain. We'll be taking off and weigh-ins at 2 o'clock. It's going to be a fun time. We already have some really good sponsors on board with us. Obviously, we have a platinum sponsor, Browns AC, that was huge for us. But our goal is to get 50 boats out there and help us raise roughly about $3,000 for the trip if we're able to reach that goal. That would be huge for us. For the team going, that's a lot of money towards that trip.
Right.
So if you want to be a part of that, either by fishing or by sponsoring, or even just by showing up for the weigh-in or serving in some capacity. Again, they can email me for that one as well, jj@ridgepointchurch.org for all of those. And I'll get you in contact with a couple of guys who are helping run that trip. I love that we have some different people leading. So if you want to get with Justin and Kyle about helping out with that, just send me an email and I'll get you in contact with them as well.
Okay. One of the other things that we just mentioned last night, but we also mentioned in the service yesterday, is partnerships. We've been talking about partnerships all throughout January, what it means to be an RPC partnership or an RPC partner. We're not going to go through all that right now, other than just remind you, if you still haven't filled out your partnership card, you can do that here Sunday, or you can go to partner.ridgepointchurch.org and get signed up there as well. We're kind of bringing this to an end of talking about that for this year, so we'd love for you to basically lock arms with us and say, you know what, we're with Ridge Point Church, we're with what God's doing here as we move into 2018.
Absolutely. So. And along with that, if for some reason you weren't able to be at Status last night, we shared a lot of information in all areas, in every area of what we're talking about, every area of service. And we had this key word being diversity, and talk about diversity of leadership and get some different people in leadership positions. By the way, Jameson Smith wrapped up Status last night, leading communion. I know that was outside his comfort zone, and Becca and the rest of the unconventional band for us led us in worship. They did a great job. But a lot of people, we had a great group there. But if you weren't there and want to know some of the takeaways from this particular Status, we have these cards. We have a few of these left that just on one side has, here's the big events that are coming in the next year. And on the back side just kind of defines who our leadership is, some staff, elders, trustees, treasurer. We had some big announcements about that last night as well. So if you weren't here and want to get one of these takeaway cards for what's coming up, make sure you get these this coming Sunday.
All right. So yesterday we wrapped up the movement series. Just a great way to kick off the beginning of the year here.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind this series is that we want to move from complacency to commitment. So what was in your mind, what was kind of the biggest takeaway for the series for us? Yeah,
and it's hard because there's so much information that we shared throughout the series. I shared this really starting with the third week. I started having some really in-depth conversations, both within people within the church. Just saying, man, JJ, to kick off this year, that's exactly where I'm at. But then also just some conversations I've had with people in the community.
Right.
That it just seems like, man, where God has us. I think sometimes you just get in a series where it just resonates with where people are at. And this series was one of those things where just every conversation seemed like I was coming across. I'm like, man, let's go back to what's essential. Throughout this whole series, we have put value on if we want a movement to take place. For the movement to take place, we have to pray this prayer: God, work in me in order that you can work through me. But also have to put a high focus, a high priority upon the reading of Scripture, the focusing on, if I want God to move, I have to focus on what God said to me. I can't worry about anything else if I'm not worried about what He already said to me. I've been part of a group on YouVersion, and every morning I get up pretty early. I get up early, 6 or 6:30 at the latest, normally before that. And normally I count, before I even get up, there's one or two people who already put comments up for that day. And I look forward to reading the Scripture, but also reading the comments and having that group kind of working together. And so really I'd say the biggest thing is that as we kind of go through this series, and as we went through the series, is to say, man, I'll be part of a movement. And for there to be movement, I mentioned this, I think, in the first service yesterday, that it takes one or two people out front leading. But then once they start leading, then it takes more people getting bought in and saying, oh yeah, that's something I want to be behind.
Right.
And then the big idea the first week, I think, is the one that kind of stuck with us. Complacency is the enemy of spiritual progress, or complacency is the enemy of spiritual movement or life.
Right.
And I said yesterday, if complacency is its enemy, then commitment is its friend.
Right.
And so we have to move from complacency to commitment for us to get there.
Mm. So yesterday we read the passage in Acts 5 where basically there's the rest of the disciples. Of course, we see that all throughout Acts. The disciples keep getting arrested
Right.
for proclaiming who Jesus was. But what's the outcome of that in the grand scheme of this movement in the early church?
Yeah. First of all, you see the disciples, and they just like to be together.
Yeah.
They're going out and they're kind of preaching, getting arrested, getting thrown in jail, being released, and they give each other high fives. I can't believe you got counted worthy to suffer for his name, and then they go out and start preaching again, and inevitably they get arrested again. They're told, you better stop that, and I loved Gamaliel's response yesterday and all that. But if we just write a little bit ahead in the next chapter, we kind of end up at the end of chapter 5. But the beginning of chapter 6, we see that they're out there proclaiming Jesus, and they're like, that's awesome. This is what we're about. But we're also trying to formulate the inner mechanisms of the church. And it doesn't take very long for church government and policy to start to get in its way, and one side starts to accuse the other. And there's, in particular, the Hellenists, which are the Greek-speaking Christians that are the Gentiles, start to come after the Hebrew section of the church and say, hey, wait a minute. You're not taking care of widows within the church the way that you should. Mm-hmm. And the Jewish Christians are like, you know what, you're right. Like we haven't taken as much care as we should in that area. And what they don't have that we are still trying to figure out, but we have a better grasp upon, is for them this was all brand new. This whole movement was brand new. They didn't have church government. They didn't know how it should work out. So they're kind of like, yeah, we should, but no one's ever taught us how to do that before. We need some people who are devoted to teaching, but we need people devoted to service. And so literally in Acts chapter 6, beginning of chapter 6, we see them start to divvy up responsibility. Mm-hmm. And to say we're all kind of talented in different areas. We all have different depths and maturities and likes and dislikes and all these things. And so they said, for some of us, we should devote ourselves to teaching. We're here to be called, called to be teachers. We're focused on instruction and learning and growth. But we need some people who are focused on serving. Mm-hmm. And now we see sometimes that people who focus on serving, they sit under that leadership for a little while, and eventually they move into that leadership capacity themselves.
Right.
But the idea is that we're all gifted differently. And so they say, you're right, we're not taking care of the widows like we should. And so we're going to devote ourselves to continue teaching, but we're going to commission these 7 people to go and to serve. Right. Now you guys go and serve. And the thing that I love about that is that takes place in the first 6 verses. They start to set aside these servers, these leaders. They commission them, they lay hands on them, and they send them out to go and do this. Then in verse 7 it says, and the word of God continued to increase, and the number of disciples multiplied greatly in Jerusalem, and a great many of the priests became obedient to the faith. So we see them say, okay, you're right, we should structure this, but we're not going to focus on that. Right. We need to have structure, but the word of God is going to increase. And as long as that keeps increasing, disciples are multiplying, and even people who were critical of the movement earlier come to faith in Christ. Right. Something I think we're lacking. So it's kind of neat to see the multiplication is what we're looking for.
Right. So you also, last night at Status, kind of tying this all together, you talked about this idea of diversity, and specifically kind of diversity of gifts within the church. So how does that kind of play into all of this?
Yeah, we talked about 1 Corinthians 12, verses 1 through 7 last night, and I could have skipped down. All of chapter 12 is all about gifts and service and all of that, and at the very end he says of chapter 12, he says, I'll show you a more excellent way, and we get into 1 Corinthians 13, which is the love chapter, and really leadership is about love. But along those lines, as we saw in the early church, even though we think we have it figured out a little bit better, it's still something. We've had discussions today at staff meeting earlier about, man, how do you figure out where people serve and what events to do and all those different things that we try to figure out. So it's not that we have it all under wraps and have it all figured out. But we're all gifted differently. You know, Chris, our personalities are fairly different. God created those personalities inside of us. Both of us are different than Josh, and we look at that, and Tanya being part of the leadership team, and our personalities are different, and God brings us together for that. Our talents are different, God brings us together for that. But the church is primarily a volunteer organization, and so really, for the church to function as a church should be, it takes people who have a variety of talents. There's not one of us on staff that needs to be playing a guitar on Sunday morning.
No.
I
will agree with that.
Yeah, there's not one of us that is talented in that area. We're not singing. Josh is trying back there, but that's just not where we're talented.
Right.
And if we try to do that, we're taking away from somebody else's area of giftedness and talent. And so when the church functions the best, it's when I sit there and I try to figure out, as a believer in Jesus, how has God gifted me most to impact His kingdom? And it might be through the playing of an instrument. It might be through running a computer. There's a variety of services that we have that, man, we need someone who can just run a computer, that can serve in different capacities. And so you might be sitting there thinking, man, I don't know how I could serve. And so that kind of puts this fear, well, I'm not going to sign up because I don't see how my particular gifts work well. And sometimes in a church setting, sometimes not in a church setting, but God gives us a gift to build up His kingdom. Discover what that gift is and utilize it.
Right. Okay, so now we've got a couple other kind of things coming up in the next couple of weeks. In fact, kind of an opportunity to take a next step in the next couple of weeks. You want to talk about that?
Sure. We've had a number of people, especially during week 3 of the series, we kind of gave people a chance to respond and stand up. And one of the steps people take once they choose to follow Christ is to follow Him in baptism.
Right.
And so in the next couple of weeks, we'll be having a baptism service. And so if that's the next step for you, man, we would love for you to either email us, or I think we actually have an email address set up specifically. Baptism at ridgepointchurch.org. So if you want to get baptized, simply email baptism@ridgepointchurch.org. We have a long list of people already that we're kind of working through and figuring that out.
Did we say the date?
We didn't yet, no.
Okay, so March 8th. Yeah. No,
February 18th. February 18th.
It's going to be March 18th too.
That's
because
true.
February and March, they're tricky like that, except in leap year,
Yeah.
So yeah,
for the most part, third Sunday of the month. It's really kind of focused on baptism. So February 18th and March 18th, we'll be having baptism. So if you want to get baptized or find out more information, simply email baptism@ridgepointchurch.org, and we'll be able to get with you.
And one other thing I want to mention too, we over the next couple of weeks, we've got some, just a lot of information, really important stuff that's coming out. Some of it's kind of a follow-up to what we talked about at Status, but just some changes that are happening. And so if you don't get our email news, it's not really a newsletter. It's usually once a week we try to send out some kind of email. Last week it was an email from JJ about Status and what was the other thing?
Partnership cards.
Yeah. So, but if you don't get those, let us know in the comments. Give us your email address, or you can email me, Chris at ridgepointchurch.org. And we want to get you on that list because there's some important stuff coming over the next couple of weeks that you need to know about. And we're trying to target that stuff, but we want to make sure that you guys know about it. So
and if you have an email address, I know sometimes we have multiple email addresses, and there's one that we check more frequently. If that's the boat that you're in, let us know the best email address for you, because sometimes it's hard on a Sunday morning to announce all the stuff we want to announce. And so because of that, we're going to utilize email more and more this year.
And if you use Gmail, always check your social folder or your promotion folder, because we use MailChimp and sometimes it gets thrown over there. So check those places to make sure it's getting into your inbox, because sometimes you may be signed up for it, you just don't see it because you don't check those sections.
Definitely. So that's about time to wrap it up. Josh, did we miss anything back there? Over easy, my bad.
Scrambled eggs.
No, he's got one from actually a very special one, Mr. JJ. From Bet says Zach is upset. This doesn't work both ways. He wants to say hi, Daddy.
Oh man, that is awesome. Well, Zach, I'm coming home in a little bit, buddy. We'll see you then. That'll be some real face-to-face conversation, competition. He likes to compete with me too.
So that's it though. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, whatever team you're cheering for this weekend, I hope you enjoy the game. We'll see you Sunday morning, 9 or 10:45. Unfortunately, this week there will be no chili at the church because last night that was pretty good.
Right. Yeah. Unless you bring a can of chili to put in the Super Bowl.
There you go.
And don't throw them at anybody. Just
That's right. Especially, yeah. Hey, thanks for checking us out. We'll see you this coming weekend.